Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Renate McNay. Today in the studio with me is Suzanne Foxton. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, Renata.
Grace was shining on Suzanne and she awakened while she was washing dishes. And we are going to find out the story about it. So can you talk us through, Suzanne, how that happened and when it happened?
Well, the biggest sort of quality of it happening was that what I was looking for was always right there in the first place. So I could tell the story of what seemed to happen leading up to that.
Yeah.
But just to preface it by saying it doesn't really matter, it's not important, and this kind of thing seems to happen in so many different ways for different people.
Yes.
But I was going through some therapy.
Yes.
Three years ago or so, and was at I was very suicidal, and it was just the classic existential crisis.
Yes, so you were in a depression.
Oh yeah, big depression.
Yeah.
No meaning, just looking at a big void, and and many people will know just what I'm talking about. It's terrible, terrible. It was awful. It was hell. Mm-hmm. And I had a sort of a big breakdown and went into hospital, and I was very, very malnourished and underweight, and spent a lot of time just getting my health back, but started therapy for the depression, and I was probably just very fortunate that the person that was there to help me was a little bit of a traditional seeker, I suppose, of enlightenment or whatever you might call it.
Yes.
And introduced this a little bit into the therapy.
Yeah.
Most of the therapy had a lot to do with just peeling away a credible sense of worthlessness.
Yes.
That really came into it a lot, and feeling utterly unworthy, which is, I suppose, is the big problem with the ego. It's just a little constructed thing that's given way too much responsibility and feels really unworthy. So
you had a difficult childhood, I guess.
Well, I had sort of some difficulties in childhood, but I wouldn't blame my parents or at all. It's we have no control over these things, and the way I responded was quite bad, rather than what actually might have happened to me. So that was quite difficult, and I had a very difficult adolescence, I suppose, and did lots of experimenting with altering my state of mind, and very dependent on alcohol and other substances, and was just basically desperate to be anywhere but where I was. Desperate to get out of my head in any way I could.
Yes.
Just, whatever was in front of me was never enough. It was never good enough, or else it was terrible, and I wanted to leave, and I never could just be there. Just be there. So when I had this sort of big existential crisis or whatever, and depression and suicide and all that, which so many people go through, and I was really suffering. It was really awful. I suppose the therapy substituted with what other people might practice in other ways. It was just a peeling away of the ego and the need to be validated, and in some strange, convoluted way, I was validated, and loved by the therapist, and also by my friends and family, and that sort of sense of worthlessness got peeled away through that, and just sort of a being and a presence with other people became enjoyable, and I was able to appreciate it, and then I had this thing with the knife, washing up.
So tell us that thing with the knife.
Well, the thing with the knife. I was just washing up, and I had never been a traditional seeker in the way that some people are.
Yeah.
But I had this sort of, recently introduced ideas about it, and was just about the meaning of life. What is it? What is we are all one, or, that kind of thing. Very vague and nebulous. But then I looked at the knife, and it just seemed to be very much itself. I don't know.
So the knife was itself.
The knife became very knife-ish.
Yes.
It's very, very, very hard to describe, except that I just saw that everything had always been like that the whole time,
Yeah.
with maybe something in the way of it. We could call that the ego, if you like, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yes.
And I was just not able to fully appreciate it until then. But I think, if I could just say, maybe it's a bit dangerous in a way to describe a certain happening, a big event that seems to happen, an awakening, aha moment, because it often, that's not the case. I think at some people it's a very gradual, gentle sort of a thing, but just for me it just had to be, whoa, oh yeah, here I am.
Yes.
And what I was looking for was this knife, and whatever else happened to be around.
Yeah. So what happened after you saw the real nature in the knife?
Well, what happened? Well, it doesn't really matter, but I did have a sort of a moment there where I was, I think, crouching on the kitchen floor, going, whoa, whoa, a bit like Bill and Ted in their Excellent Adventures. Whoa, whoa. That didn't really last very long. And that was kind of fun, and I had sort of a internal visual thing of all creation forming in on itself again and again, and kind of winking in and out of existence over and over, something like that. It's very hard to describe.
So you knew what you were experiencing in this moment. You didn't have any doubts coming in, or you didn't have any thoughts, oh my God, I'm getting crazy?
Yeah, well, I think that afterwards, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I got some sort of physiological, phenomenal things where I felt like I was seeing things maybe slightly above the usual, where the eyes come out.
Yes.
And I did think, and I was still in therapy, and I did think, am I going nuts? And so I was just searching on the internet, as one does these days, and I came across Stanley Sabatka's course in consciousness.
Yes.
He's a quantum physicist at the University of Virginia, and he had a whole sort of a tome of about 200 pages about the scientific way of getting there. But he's an atomic physicist, so he's looking at the atom and how it's all space, and then there don't seem to be any rules, and it doesn't seem to be anything there, and how he kind of came to some kind of enlightenment through that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and at the end of that tome, Tony Parsons was cited, which he's quite local. He's the only one in the UK that was cited, and so I went to see him. And just some of the words he used, it just sort of reassured my mind that it wasn't going mad, that it was just, I was just seeing things very clearly, and without some of the usual safeguards that the mind puts in place, perhaps. And that's why it seemed to me my perspective was slightly different, or things would seem to actually visually disappear, and that kind of thing. And that really doesn't seem to be an issue at the moment. Everything seems very much itself, and it always has done.
Yeah.
It always has.
So when you say things start to disappearing, is this something you still experience?
Not really. I mean, a lot of people who write and talk about this kind of thing,
Yeah.
they do go on about the importance of not thinking, and you mustn't think, and clear your mind of thoughts. And if my mind doesn't seem to be terribly engaged,
Yeah.
with thinking, planning, whatevering, then yeah, sometimes actual physical objects can just kind of seem to waver around a bit. There's some, but I wouldn't say that this is a necessary thing, or a thing that people should be looking for, or it's just, the mind is going to do funny things sometimes.